So I'm a man now. Like you?
No. We are not men. We are more than that.
God of War is back on PS4, and here to bring you our spoiler-free review is Sam Loveridge and Leon Hurley. They have both played through the entire game from start to finish, and we're going to talk about the story, the gameplay, the visuals, the length, and everything else. So, first of all, Leon, Sam, let's have a brief overview of just what's going on in God of War.
So we're joining Kratos now in sort of Norse mythology. An unspecified amount of time has passed. He's now kind of like a Viking. He lives in the forest with his son Atreus. Things happen at the beginning I don't want to sort of talk about because it's spoilery, but for reasons they have to go on a journey, and one of the main mission threads is called A Journey, or The Journey, and they set off across Midgard, which is obviously the Viking realm where all the people live. And things happen. Like there is an overriding objective you're trying to sort of complete, but you meet various characters. Unlike previous God of Wars, this is kind of a semi-open world, so you have quite a large sort of hub area, which is full of like side missions and things to do. It's a much more. There's still a very linear core to it. There's a lot more sort of sideways stuff where you can spread out and do things. And despite kind of a lot of changes to combat, to character time setting, there's a very God of War feel to sort of the spectacle and the fighting. So a lot's changed, but also there's quite a lot that stayed the same.
And outside of that main quest line, Sam, is this more of a story that has a beginning and an end, or is it like a journey about Kratos as a man, like developing?
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, I haven't played any other God of War games, so I was coming to this totally fresh, which felt, for me, a bit of a challenge. I know it's called God of War and they haven't called it God of War 4 for a reason, but I was sort of worried that I wouldn't understand all the references and stuff. But at its core, this is a story about a god who is learning how to be a man and a father and to not be who he once was. And it's quite nice not knowing who he once was and just having those sort of flecks of the old times come back to sort of haunt him, more importantly, than you.
Okay, so gameplay-wise, Leon, you've touched on the semi-open world. So is it more of akin to like the hubs you'd find in like the recent Tomb Raider games and that kind of thing?
Yes, I mean it's Midgard is a very large area. It's sort of there's a lake in the middle, and you have a boat. Your boat is like the main vehicle. So in between missions, you're on a boat. You're sort of sailing around. You have like an objective marker, which is pretty brutally kind of goes left and right when you pass a turning point. So the things you can mark on that. But
So true.
You build up. There are labours, which are kind of like the main mini side quests that you sort of do for various people. There are various challenges, treasure maps. There's about 5 kind of categories of things to do. So you could just stay on the main mission marker and just go straight through it, have a pretty normal linear God of War journey, or you could, go off sideways and find like quite big, spectacular sort of missions. I don't want to spoil anything. There's a lot of things you do where you're kind of like, this is just a side thing, and it's all there after the game's completed as well. So I took maybe sort of 30 or so hours, 25, 30 hours to finish it, half and half in kind of side missions and main stuff, because I had to get to the end obviously to finish a review. But now I finished it, it's all still there, I'm still exploring. It's beautifully done as well. The characters talk when you're on the boat, and the dialogue, even that sort of little incidental dialogue, is like really well written and meaningful. So if you do have to sail like 5 minutes that way, they're filling in the background of the area, or they're talking about something that's happened. So there isn't any slack anywhere. You never feel like you're wasting your time or the game is filling time. Everything is just perfectly kind of tuned.
And Sam, in terms of doing the main storyline quests, once you get past, I imagine, the initial opening, is it just a free, hey, now do this in any order you want type thing?
Yeah, you have to follow the story in a certain order, but you can do whatever you want, whenever you want. It's only when you start to get into sort of the big central open area, the Lake of Nines, that you suddenly realise that the game has so much more to give you. You might see a chest that's covered in black branches and be like, well, how do I open that? Or see an area that's sort of shrouded in red mist or green mist or something, and you know that the game has more to give you. And it's so good at that, because like it's not until about halfway through the game you can get a freaking compass. So it's just like, oh, okay, we're not done here. We're not done learning or developing or changing, and that's like a beautiful thing. And I think the game sort of encourages you to do some of the story and then come back, because it keeps bringing you back to this sort of central area, and then things change and things develop, and you're like, okay, now I know how to do that. Let's go back to this area, and it's just constantly distracting you. I've never seen a game with so many collectibles. I'm going slightly mad with like the ravens and everything else that you've got to find.
You've played all the Assassin's Creed games.
Yes,
so.
and that's there are more in an Assassin's Creed game, definitely.
Wow.
It's constantly giving you things throughout the whole game. Like here's a new tool, here's a new thing, and that means that the game is constantly developing. But it's also really good. It kind of herds you gently, maybe sometimes back to an area where, if you run out of things you can access because you don't have the next tool, it kind of encourages you to go back to the main story or to where you might get an upgrade. So you don't even realise sometimes you're being pushed in a certain direction because you might need a certain thing. But even now, like we're all post story, we finished it, and there's still new things to find. I'm still finding things that well, how would that have changed my game if I'd found it before the end of the credits?
But as you say, it's still very much a God of War game, so there are still bosses, the combat's still very visceral and aggressive and gruesome, and there's still like an upgrade tree to go through, right?
Yeah, that man puts his fingers in places where fingers shouldn't be, and by that I mean rib cages and eyes. Yeah. So you don't have the Blades of Chaos anymore, which were big, wide, swingy things. The camera used to be very high up, and you'd sort of have almost like an overhead view with these big, wide, sweeping chains. And I'm making the actions here, like anyone can see that. Now you have an axe, and it's much more focused. You're hitting the thing in front of you, maybe some sweeping blows to clear some space. And because the camera's more over the shoulder, this combat is much more. It's like dodging and sort of evading, making some space, using your tools to kind of maybe stall some people while you attack someone else. But it's still very bloody, it's still very, as I say, visceral. You have an axe, you are literally cleaving people in twain, pulling them apart, stamping on heads. He still has his Spartan rage, so he's running around smacking with fists. You can throw the axe, and when you don't have the axe, you can use your fists, and you have a shield. So you've got the old parry system as well, where if you perfectly block a projectile, you fire it back. And over time, this sort of toolkit builds out until you sort of have this incredible sort of repertoire of basically ways of really painfully killing people.
What's great is that you can change your loadout per enemy. Like you can keep switching out your attacks and your armor depending on the situation you've got. So if you've got like a really high-powered enemy that's weak to fire, say, like you can do that instead and switch everything out. You're not locked down. You can keep changing and evolving.
I was going to say that this does sound quite confusing, and I think we both agreed that was maybe one of the tiny drawbacks that this game has. Like that initial like upgrade system is like pretty overwhelming, right?
Yeah, it takes a long time to sort of understand its rhythms and stuff, and I think because it isn't like any other God of War game, I think, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, in broad strokes, it's very different.
Yeah, I think learning how to play this new God of War is part of the enjoyment in itself. I think understanding how it works and sort of that moment where you're like, oh, okay, if I put this in this hole and everything fits together, and then if I use all these attacks in this way and tweak this, it's just like, okay, suddenly you've unlocked like the next level before you have to get towards those high bosses, and it is rewarding if eventually it's just initially you're just like, oh dear God, what am I doing?
I didn't realise until quite late on in the game like how useful luck was. So I was building out strength and defence. I wanted this big, meaty, powerful Kratos that could just smash things with one blow. And I was getting killed a lot because you can only get health from health stones, which are basically like pickups that you stamp on. And I got a pickup I got a thing for Atreus that meant you could find more. And then I realised how much my luck was affecting that. So then I started really beefing up my luck. So instead of having a fight where maybe there'd be a health stone at the end if I survived, I'd be having a fight where health stones were just dropping all over the place. And in terms of we were talking about the different items and stuff like that, that was the other thing I struggled with early on was you'd be like, am I having trouble with this enemy because I don't have the right gear, or I'm not high enough level? Can I not get through this area because I don't have the right tool, or am I just doing it wrong? And after a while, you start to go, oh, that colour object needs this, or this thing needs that. But to start with, you don't know whether you have the tool, you don't have the tool, if you're doing it right, if you're doing it wrong.
Because there are also puzzles in this game, like there have been in previous God of Wars, that are locked to certain things that you may or may not have at the time.
The core one is you have
Nice.
your Leviathan axe. When you throw it, whatever it hits, it freezes. So the very first puzzle you encounter is a chain opens the door. As soon as you let go of the chain, the door drops, and you use the axe to freeze the cog you can see. And that's like a very simple example. By the end of the game, it's doing incredibly clever things with it. So there are puzzles where you look at all the pieces and you're like, I can't believe how good this is. It's I mentioned this in the review. It's almost like kind of Legend of Zelda Korok Seed kind of thing, where they only really have kind of one idea, which is with the Korok Seed, it's like replace the missing thing you're using. But by the end of it, you start to see it in the world, and you start to really appreciate how clever and how sort of well designed it's done, that like 30-40 hours later you're still finding puzzles and going, this is brilliant.
Yeah, because you know you've got like a certain ability, but it doesn't tell you like how much that certain ability can be changed and used in different ways. It's just like, there are one point where I was just like, holy heck, I see it now, and it constantly surprises you all the way through.
So gameplay wise, it's quite a big change. Visually, it's obviously had a big
it's so
upgrade
pretty.
to PS4. So I think is it fair to say it's probably the best looking game on PS4 right now?
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, crank up your 4Ks and all your colours, and it's one of the most beautiful games I've ever played. Full stop.
You literally see like the skin translucency on some of the characters, which is a thing they always do whenever they do like making of videos. They talk about the subsurface scattering and how the light will penetrate the skin a little bit and be scattered. You can see that on some of the characters. Some of the characters have like realistic looking skin. It looks like the light goes in there. The trees are amazing.
It's just the attention to detail, like you were saying in your review, like there are tiny frogs. They don't need to be there, but they're just there having a little time on their own, and just the world feels so alive. The way that the sort of petals fall off the trees and stuff. Like when this game gets a photo mode, which apparently it is getting, like the internet's going to be awash with it. It's going to be the new Horizon Zero Dawn in terms of like the amount that you want to just screen grab this game.
Yeah.
Like it's
Detail
beautiful.
is astonishing. Like the frogs and lizards. There's like little animals every now and then, and you'll just, if you stop and look down, you're like, that little frog that you can barely see because it's just on the floor and you walk past it all the time, that is rendered like such incredible detail. Normally like low importance.
It even has like a personality. It's bonkers.
I mean, it's worth saying that we did play this on the PS4 Pro.
Yeah.
In 4K
Yeah.
with like all the options, so it's
Well, actually, Leon played it in 4K with locked 30 FPS.
So I played it in 4K, which is it just says favouring resolution. It doesn't really say anything about the frame rate. The frame rate is good. I'd say it's about 30. It doesn't fluctuate, which is the main thing. You can bump it down to 60 frames a second, 1080p.
That's how I played it.
I found the colours were a little brighter because I think it maybe does something with the HDR. And I've also played it on a Slim, and it looks great on all. Like on a Slim, it looks fantastic, and it's only when you go up to 4K and Pro, you can realise you can see like every pore in the back of Kratos' head. It's astonishing.
Okay, so we touched a little bit on how long it is as a game, but is it like a core story if you just went from start to finish without doing side quests?
I think if you just put your blinkers on, you'd probably be about 20-25 hours.
Yeah.
But obviously it's so easy to get distracted that you're probably looking at, God knows how much we've put into it so far, but upwards of 40 hours plus, depending on how many things you want to find.
So it's a big old game.
Big old game.
I'm still playing it, and it has some like post game stuff that goes on a little while. It's still there. Like there's some stuff that you can find during the game that goes on for a while. I don't know, I'm giving spoilers. But
it doesn't stop after the credits
Yeah.
roll. Like there's so much more to see that, like, I'm honestly addicted to this game. Every moment that I'm not writing stuff is spent playing this game because it just keeps on giving. Like just when you think that you've finished, there's just like, oh, there's another thing. Oh, and there's also this other thing that you need to collect or find or this person to speak to. Like there's just so much, and like I don't know at what point it'll be finished because it just seems like, have you just got one more little secret for me hidden away somewhere?
You've both got a couple of things because the map shows you everything you can collect. There's like usually like 10 things per region. There's still a couple of things on a few regions that say undiscovered.
What are you?
We're like 40 plus hours into this game at this point, and there's still things we haven't found.
Okay, well, if you haven't guessed what the score is going to be by now, we're
Have we
about
been
to
gushing?
put a score on it. So, what are we giving God of War?
5?
You sound like you got a question mark on that, but yeah.
I was going to try and go 4 or 5. 5. That is absolutely 5. Like if there was another level of 5, I would give it another level of 5.
Okay, well, let us know what you think about God of War in the comments below. Click the boxes on the left for more content from us, and don't forget to hit the big button in the middle to subscribe for more gaming news, reviews, previews, and features right here on GamesRadar Plus.
Come then. We have a long journey ahead.